I made Ocarina of Time go from this to this using the community's best tools and mods. Then I did it again and again and again, till I had 4 3D Zelda games all launchable from a single place in my Steam library, like my very own 3D All-Stars type collection. Why did I do it, you ask? Well, you see, The Legend of Zelda is easily the most influential and popular action-adventure series of all time, averaging a crazy 89.6 score on Metacritic. But I've only played 2 out of the 21 mainline entries, and that's all due to my agonizingly large backlog. Yes, I could just play them all via Switch Online, remasters or remakes, but I'm just extremely extra and I also love tinkering my games. So I wanted more. 4K resolutions, 16:9 widescreen hacks, mods, and also texture packs to improve the visuals. And to achieve this, I've spent the past few days scouring the internet, finding every little mod, tool or setting that I can change in order to make these games look as best as possible. And some of the stuff that I found here is absolutely mind-boggling to a mere casual like me. Everything included in this video is going to be linked down below as part of a free Patreon post, just to make sure I don't flood the description with links. With that out of the way, here's the plan. Number 1, the games must feel as close as possible to the original with a modern twist. That means, for example, Link must stay Link from his era, no Twilight Princess Link in Ocarina of Time. Number 2, they all have to run on my main PC, but this time around, as well as my Steam Deck, which means 1440p on my PC and 800p on my Steam Deck, and a minimum of 60 FPS of course. Then number 3, they should all launch from Steam, and when I press play, I must go straight into the game, no middleman software. And number 4, to ensure the stability of what I've created, I cannot move on to modding the next game until I've played at least 20 minutes on my PC as well as my Steam Deck. If it crashes, lags, and breaks in any way, then I have to delete my save and start from scratch. Lastly, number 5, to make this whole thing feel actually seamless between the 2 devices, the saves have to sync between my PC and my Steam Deck. So I need to be able to pick up where I left off on either of these without manually transferring saves. I have a feeling I'm really going to regret that last rule. Not as much as you're going to regret missing out on the amazing future content by not subscribing to the channel. I'm trying to get this channel to reach 100k subs before GTA 6 releases, which, you know, could be a few years from now depending on delays. It's also super important that I make it clear here that I use emulation in this video, but I don't nor ever will condone piracy. All of the games featured in this video need to be dumped yourself from official consoles, game discs, or cartridges.
So the coming ITV News, when it comes to video games, the more bits the better, and the new machine from Nintendo is as good as it gets.
Enter 1998, the year that Link would enter the 3D space for the very first time on the Nintendo 64. Nintendo saw this as a bit of a definitive showcase of its new console. Shigeru Miyamoto, series co-creator and producer, described the goal as creating an entirely new emotional experience, using the N64's 3D capabilities. He emphasized that full 3D worlds and high fidelity animation would let players feel Link's emotions in ways that 2D games could not. It was clear from the press coverage that Nintendo was aiming to make Ocarina of Time not just a commercial blockbuster, but a technical landmark. The hype was insane though, because records show that this had 3 times more pre-orders than any other titles at the time, 325,000 in the US to be specific, and that's with a pretty premium retail price as well, of $69.95. which is roughly over $130 when adjusted for inflation. You know, now Mario Kart World doesn't seem too bad, does it? The game released in the US on Thanksgiving weekend on November 23rd, 1998, and well, fans showed up in droves, and loads of kids around the world anticipated the game for Christmas. But since I was not one of those kids, to tell this story properly, we actually have to fast forward instead of rewind to the year 2016. Because you see, the Nintendo Switch was just announced, and it was incredible. Seeing Breath of the Wild for the very first time on that TV, and then seeing the guy get up from the couch, pick up the Switch, and continue playing it in handheld mode, the hype was unreal. I pre-ordered it, and when launch day finally came, the next 6 months were a total blur to me. This thing consumed my life. The world was absolutely massive and filled with details. Completing the shrines was super fun, and discovering how to get the Master Sword, how to tame a horse, and of course the fact that you can play this game for just ages and still discover new things. This game was unlike anything I'd ever played before, so the natural thing to do here was to go back and play the 3D entries in the series in order. Of course though, that did not happen. However, I did try to play this game a total of 4 times across different platforms, but each time the same problem arises. The game's presentation, themes and premise were super interesting to me, but every 15 minutes or so, I would completely get lost on what it was that I needed to do next. And often it involved a lot of backtracking, which I hated. 3 of the times were via emulation, and then the 4th was via the 3DS remake. The 4th time on that 3DS remake was actually the furthest that I got, but I still didn't see it through to the end. It really did feel like I had to rely on online guides in order to know what I was doing in this game, which I really did not like as it broke my immersion. So when I started with this first game, I knew that I needed something that was going to give me a really fresh new experience. I started off by researching what there was out there, and that's when I found this. Ship of Harkinian is, according to The Verge, proof that the unofficial option is sometimes the best. Well, there's only one way to find out, right? But before I got ahead of myself, I devised a plan how I was gonna, approach all of this before going headfirst into it. And that was that I wanted every single one of these games to look good on my PC first, then I would move on to Steam Deck. And I would do that for each of the games, and at the very end, that's when I would tackle the whole save syncing thing. So with that in mind, I then continued on with the Ship of Harkinian website because there's a setup guide on there, and that was going to make sure that I knew what I was doing here. Starting with making sure that I had the right game backed up, because you need a certain version, and this handy site lets you know if your own ROM is the right one. To be honest, what's interesting about this is when I was reading up about how to dump your game, I was unaware of the fact that this game was actually re-released on the GameCube in 2003. And because of that, it makes it really easy to just put the game in a soft-modded Wii or Wii U and get the files that way, skipping any specialized hardware in the process. Now, in order for this to be neatly packaged, what I did was put the game file next to Ship of Harkinian, which I got from their GitHub. Hopefully this saves me headaches in the future of misplacing that game file. I then opened the program, followed the instructions, and watch how long this thing takes. Yeah, under 20 seconds, and this thing just launched straight into game with no fuss at all. As great as that is though, we still have work to do. We need this game running at 1440p 60 FPS, and right out of the gate it was clear that it was already running at the correct resolution, but the game did look very choppy. I found out that if you hit escape it brings up this menu, but I didn't want to get too ahead of myself of changing anything. I wanted to get in game first so that I could see the changes that I was going to make. And whilst I was doing that, I was noticing that my Xbox controller was just working, which was great. At this point, the excitement was through the roof. Seeing the intro cutscene and the music that plays, I was so ready. After watching the first cutscene, I leaped out of bed, ran outside, and then hit F11 again to bring up that overwhelming setting menu. I made my way through each panel, and here are the things that I found. Right at the start was an option to change the boot sequence that we saw earlier, from the custom one that it was to an authentic N64 one. I also swung back around to the graphics menu where I ticked the box to match my refresh rate, which is 240. So therefore, with that single click, we had the game running at 240 FPS. This felt really good, although my overlay for some reason was showing the frame times as jumping up and down, but I was for sure this was bugged. It felt really smooth, and there was practically zero stutter or tear in the image, so I don't think this is correct. Next I looked over controls. I really wanted this to be perfect, but it's really unrealistic to just nail the controls right off the rip, especially since I really don't have any experience playing this game. So I didn't perfect this till later on, but for now there are a few things that caught my eye, like the gyro settings. Now, other than the N64 controller being designed for people with radiated mutations, it has gyro support. Nintendo has always put gimmicky motion controls into a lot of what they do. I mean, a whole console was based off of the idea, but I'm actually in the camp of enjoying this. I know some people don't like gyro, but for me personally, Breath of the Wild, for example, the aiming was super fun in that game. I unfortunately recently sold my Switch Pro controller, so all I had left lying around was the DualSense controller, but that was going to do just fine. So I plugged that in, clicked add, pressed a button on the controller, and it instantly detected and worked perfectly. There was a clear trend of just trying stuff out and then it working perfectly, but trust me, that won't really stay the case for that long, unfortunately. For now though, rumble was working, as well as a really niche setting called LEDs. As the name implies, this changes the LED colour on your controller to a Zelda themed tunic green. What a time to be alive. I also ticked some boxes to allow the D-pad to be used for the ocarina, menus, and items, which should make everything feel more natural, as I would just come to expect that from a game. I am missing one really crucial setting here though, and that's free cam. Back to the goofy N64 controller, it only has one stick. So those that are unaware, I'm sure you're wondering how you move the camera in those games, and I'm glad you asked. You don't. So if I want to keep this as authentic as possible, I would leave this out, but I just really love being able to move the camera with the right stick, and I think it feels so much more natural and more closer to the more modern Zelda games, so I'm gonna add it. It was then important that I unbind the C-stick controls. I didn't really know what was the most intuitive buttons to assign the C buttons to, but don't worry about it, I do come back to this later. I mean, I will come back to that later, right? For now though, I got distracted with the other settings, like the enhancement presets. Out of these, I knew that Vanilla Plus was going to be the obvious choice because it really speaks to the kind of game that I want here. I want something that doesn't alter the gameplay. I did want to skim through just really quickly though and make sure that everything suited my preference. The issue is though, a lot of these settings use terminology that I'm clueless about because I've never played this game, and so it was really hard to know what I actually wanted to even change. There was however still a handful of options, like minimal HUD. I don't really like bulky HUDs in games, and this one is definitely on the bulkier side. I love games with as little as possible UI or just really scaled down, and the issue is I couldn't find anything to scale down this HUD, so this seemed like the only fair solution to it. This was pretty well implemented though. The UI only shows up when it's needed, and then if I press the left bumper at any time, it displays it like normal. I also disabled letterboxes because in this game they show up when you're aiming the slingshot or the bow, so I just prefer it without. Increasing the actor draw distance as well to 5 times made the pop-in that was really apparent before completely disappear as well. Lastly, I just bumped up the anti-aliasing option a bit to smooth out some of the jaggy lines around Link here. With all that done, the game was now looking like this, which is a night and day glow up compared to what everyone would have seen in 1998. That being said, it was time to explore what texture packs the community has to offer here. There were 2 that I found that I wanted to try. There was DJ's 3D Experience and Ghostly Dark's Reloaded pack. I wanted to try 3D Experience first, which was when I noticed something. On the download section of this mod, it said ship loader one-click install. So does that mean this port has a mod loader? It sure does, and it's fantastic. Right there on the mod loader was the Reloaded pack, so I just clicked that, and then also there was a button to browse Game Banana, and that's where I got the 3D Experience mod too. I also couldn't help myself but browse the other mods, but honestly nothing really fit what I wanted, so I didn't end up with anything at all. I tried Reloaded first, eagerly launching the game, opening the settings, and then clicking Use Alternate Assets. My god. The sky, moon, and the logo, this thing absolutely knocked it out of the park. Now let's see the glow up here. This is what it looked like on the N64, and then this is what we have now. Judging by the changelog, this has been in development for 7 years, so props to the mod author for this because it's so insanely good. I wanted to see if the 3DS experience could top this, and it definitely is beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it just looks different. There's also an add-on called Skiller's Art, which changes the look of Link, and well, it changes Link too much, like way too much. This style really creeped me out. I mean, he's looking just directly into my soul and I hate it.
Oh, don't look back at me like that. Don't, just face forward.
Therefore, to stay true to the first rule, which I want this to be, kinda like the original, I don't want to totally change the art style. The Reloaded is definitely a better pick here. I also got myself a 100% save from online, just to see what the game looks like in other areas. And guys, we're pretty much there. There was one last experimental thing that I wanted to do to this game, and honestly, it was either going to be the biggest achievement ever or a complete flop and a waste of time, but I wanted to try it anyway, and that's add any form of ray tracing. I have Marty's RTGI, which is a reshade effect. It is paywalled, but for $5 you can keep it forever and use it on any of your games. I'm not paid or influenced to say this, I just think it's easy to get your money's worth out of it, especially if you're into tinkering your games. To To get this to work, we do need to understand the depth buffer data from the game. And this is where things can get a bit complicated. It basically tells the shader what is far and what is close. The darker the color, the closer. This is so hit and miss on older games though, and well, things were not looking so hot here because this is what it was supposed to look like, but this is what we had instead. There was one last hope though. The game by default uses DirectX for its rendering API, but perhaps OpenGL was going to work. I thought it was worth a shot, and OpenGL is honestly a nightmare to capture on OBS, so I didn't even notice that I wasn't recording this part for about 20 minutes. I could however capture it in windowed mode, so that's just what you're gonna have to deal with for now. But good news, the depth buffer worked with this. It wasn't perfect though, it was just a bit soft. There's supposed to be hard lines to determine the walls and the floors, and this is great for an effect called ambient occlusion. This just adds little shadow details to when, for example, floors transition into walls in order to make it not look overly flat. What did work though was global illumination by enabling these two settings and then adjusting everything to my liking. I also played around with the texture normal settings, which I hadn't done before. This basically creates bumpiness to some of the objects, which was super cool, but it was just too inconsistent. And of course it doesn't know what materials are what, so it could just end up adding bumpiness to stuff that really didn't need it. I'm getting distracted with all the details here though, because what this effect actually does to the lighting is pretty incredible. If you add ambient light layered on top of it as well with a very low intensity, it will just add a bit of light bleed from the sky to other objects, adding more depth. With that done, I then proceeded to uninstall Reshade completely. You see, Reshade is cool, but there are some caveats using it that I'm not willing to put up with. For example, it interferes with the UI. See here, the red hearts are creating a red light in the world behind it. Also, there are some quirks outside of the UI due to how old this game is. For example, in these pre-rendered backgrounds, like this tent for example, the original looks great, but with RTGI it becomes a bit of a mess. It can't read the data of a PNG image, and therefore it's just messing up the light bounces. Also, there are some quirks here and there. For example, when I was rolling, it was actually reflecting the blue shield on grass, which just would not happen in real life. For the UI issues, there is actually ways to circumvent it with an add-on called Shader Toggler. The thing is, I tried to get this to work though, and it didn't for this game. I tried for a good 15 minutes. So whilst I don't actually regret trying it out, I mean, we technically got ray tracing in Ocarina of Time before GTA 6, but it's not seamless and has its flaws, so I'm not going to keep it. There is a glimmer of hope that we will have true ray tracing support though in the future, and when that comes, I'm sure it's going to look very interesting. You might be wondering that why the hell would you want to ruin your old classic game with ray trace lighting, but the thing is, if you look at Super Mario 64 and how that mod handles ray tracing, it's so subtle that it actually kinda works. Not to mention the fact that it's just fun to see your older games in a new way. That being said, let's not end this one on a downer. We got Ocarina of Time looking and playing amazingly anyway. But now I've got to test its stability by playing for 20 minutes without any single issue. And oh my god, I forgot about the C buttons, didn't I? Okay, I found a Reddit post that goes over their preference for the C buttons, and I thought they seemed cool, so I copied them, and yeah, they worked really well. Anticlimactic, I know, but let's move on. I searched up when the first dungeon was in this game because I was pretty sure it was very early on, and yeah, it's within the first 30 minutes, so I decided to make completing that the goal. After I talked to everyone in the starting area, I had to first get past this annoying little guy, who would just not let me pass without a sword or a shield. So I gathered enough rupees by just exploring and talking to everyone to buy it from the shop. And for the sword, I ended up finding it by crawling under a hole in the wall, running through a maze with a giant rock trying to crush me, and there it was. With sword and shield in hand, this guy let me pass and go see the deco tree. He told me that he was cursed and he needed my courage in order to help him, and so I said yes to the task. What happens if you press no here? I still don't know. Going into this first dungeon, I knew I was going to enjoy this. Dungeons in any game are super fun for me. It was also just great to figure out everything myself. There was no guides or markers or yellow paint sprayed everywhere. It just felt good to actually be treated like a person that has a brain. I got a slingshot in this dungeon which I used to take down the spiders on the wall, and this made me use the gyro controls, which worked really well. I then had to set some sticks on fire and carry the fire to different places to unlock the other areas of the dungeon. and after solving more of these puzzles, I landed myself in a room with this creepy guy. I had to hit him in the eye when it turned red, and that would stun him, meaning that I could whack him repeatedly with his sword until he was finally defeated. Everything was flawless and was playing way better than I expected, so now it was just time to make the shortcut for the game look pretty and add it to the non-Steam collection. I also used Steam Grid DB in order to populate it with fancy artwork. This is all really simple stuff to do within Steam, so going forward I just did this for all of the games, so I'm not going to mention it over and over again. Now, Steam Deck time. I'm extremely new to the Steam Deck. In fact, the recordings that you're seeing for the video are exactly 2 days of me owning it. So I was bound to make mistakes, and honestly, if you see anything in the video weird, that's why, because not only was I new to the Steam Deck, but also this was my first time using Linux. That being said, SteamOS is super intuitive, and the setup for this game was basically identical, and within minutes I had this running at a locked 90 FPS. Also, Ship Loader worked here, so I was able to just download the reloaded textures through that. The actual only issue that I had with this was the gyro. It just didn't work. I was for sure though the Steam Deck had gyro support, and I was right. Doing some digging found that it does have support for gyro, but not for actual gyro use cases, which is really weird. It basically is used to emulate mouse or joystick movement through Steam input. That being said, as the days went by of me using the Steam Deck constantly, I got into emulation via EmuDeck, and I saw on the hub of that program that there was an app to enable gyro support. I thought maybe this would solve it, but unfortunately it only seems to work with CMU and other emulators. If there's any other way to get gyro support like this in games like this, then do let me know in the comments. The only solution that I could really come up with was using Steam input to activate gyro to act as a joystick when I needed it. This would have worked, but it would have been such a janky solution that I wouldn't have kept it like this. With that being said, everything else was working perfectly, so all I had to do was just play it for 20 minutes and then move on to the next game. Because I knew what I was doing, I basically just did the exact same thing as I did on PC, and with that, Ocarina of Time is officially complete. And so now, let's move on to Majora's Mask. Enter 2000. Nintendo at this point were clearly seeing dollar signs because they knew they had a massive franchise on their hands after the amazing success of Ocarina of Time. Shigeru Miyamoto basically entered the Nintendo offices, looked at the team, and set them a challenge. Make another Zelda game, but this time in only 1 year. So the team got to work. And when the game finally released in April 2000, fans got something a bit different. This had a more darker and more mysterious tone to it, and many were kind of divided on it. It was also a bit more linear than Ocarina of Time, and had a 3-day cycle loop. Now when it comes to getting this game up and running, at first I was going to try Two Ship to Harkinian, which is a sort of sequel to the first decomp that we've covered here. After researching more into this though, there was a texture pack that I wanted to use that was apparently, according to online, not compatible with Two Ship to Harkinian, and that's Neryl's HD pack. I've covered this on the channel before, and it's by far the most extensive and well-produced texture pack for any game that I've seen out there. I highly recommend you checking out his channel purely for the moments that he discusses how he made this texture pack. For example, the map that is excellent in this is basically him taking reference shots of the world with FreeCam and then hand drawing each detail. This adds a whole new use to the map because before it was just kind of a mess of pixels, whereas now you can fully see where you are and where you need to go. And so it was really important that I get to use this pack here. Now the good thing about the recomp as well is just how easy and intuitive everything is. It's almost identical process to Ship of Harkinian, just even more streamlined. It's basically like a full-blown PC game of Majora's Mask. Within the graphic settings, I turned up the internal resolution to 1440p, expanded the aspect ratio to 16:9, and upped the frame rate cap to 240. This is also where I got mods. For now, you have to download them from Thunderstore and then point the recomp to the zip files, but in future, they're actually planning on implementing this right into the port. Besides Neryl's pack, I found some other small quality of life things that I added, like disable letterboxing, which we had in Ocarina of Time, so I thought it was only necessary to have it here. And then textured stars makes them actually textured instead of just being squares in the original. Then disable draw distance, camera fixes, 3D items, which replaces a bunch of the 2D assets with 3D ones, D-pad menus, which let you use D-pad in the menus, and move while aiming. And then modern controller overhaul alongside a mod that changes the action buttons. These two just make it more accustomed to what I'm used to in modern games. After that, I configured my DualSense controller, and I was pretty much done and ready to test it for 20 minutes. Now at first I was not going to include this game in this video, but the fact that it's just this easy to set up, and that it's so close to Ocarina of Time, I thought there wasn't really any point in missing it out. And the 20-minute run started out pretty smooth. In fact, there's something about this recomp compared to the decomp that I played that I just like a little bit more. I can't quite pinpoint it, but it just feels so nice to play. Now at around the 8-minute mark, I pressed pause to open up my menu, and well, the game just froze and no menu popped up. No menu at all that I pressed would take me out of this pause state. I was really confused, and I also noticed that I accidentally left on cheats as well, so I had infinite rupees, so I already needed to start the run at this point. That being said, I needed to figure out what the hell was going on because I had no clue why this was happening to me. I was for sure that it was the controls, but then after disabling some mods, it turns out that the DevTools mod, I had disabled the HUD for some footage, and that was causing the pause menu to not show up, but then also not close either for some reason. I still don't know why it was doing this, but at least it works now. Rules are rules though. I have to delete my save and restart from scratch. So I deleted it and then rushed through the intro sequence and got to town. Here I pretty much wandered around clueless like I did in the first game, before finding out that I needed to go to the fairy fountain and look for a lost fairy. I soaked in the many interiors and was just basically admiring the texture pack. This game just looked so good with it. I wandered around so much that nighttime hit, and then that's where I found the fairy in the east of town, so I used the flower launchpad thingy to glide over and grab it. I then took it back to the fountain and the fairy arrived, just after the 20-minute timer went off, and so back to the Steam Deck, which was literally identical in setup to the first game and also this recomp, so I won't bore you with all the details. I was also getting in the rhythm of modding these games, so maybe 15 minutes and I was playing the game. 20 minutes flew by without any issues. I also found the fairy in a completely different location this time around. Both were now flawlessly set up, and so I wanted to show you what the N64 version looks like compared to this. Now it's time to fast forward the clock to the year 2002. The internet saw the debut of the most diabolical platform known to man called LinkedIn. On a brighter note though, Tobey Maguire would put on the Spidey outfit for the first time, and bring us one of the best superhero movies of all time. The same year, Nintendo would launch a new Zelda game. This one also divided people, but in a completely different way. Where Majora's Mask went more mature in its undertones, this one went the complete opposite, now looking like a full-blown cartoon. For me though, this stylized art style is something that I really love in games, and obviously I come from playing Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, so for me I'm already familiar with this sort of Zelda game, which is why for me Wind Waker is one of the standout Zelda games that I've always wanted to go back and play. The reception to the game aside though, decomps and recomps for this specific era of games are quite few and far between, and for Zelda games there's basically none just yet. That means we're going to have to stick with emulation, which could make or break some things, we'll have to see. So I started by researching what the deal was with this game, and well, there are two versions. The original GameCube release and a HD re-release on the Wii U. It seems like online forums as well are quite divided on which one is outright the best. For example, Reddit had many opinions, such as this one. Feature-wise, Dolphin is hands down the most mature emulator out of the two, less demanding, and it supports save states, etc, etc. And yet, when it comes to Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, I would argue that both now equally work fine in CEMU, and the two HD re-releases have some significant quality of life improvements that make CEMU a valid and maybe even preferable option. Another guy on the very same forum just said, "CEMU, bitch." There was also GM for Life, who said that he prefers the original Wind Waker to the HD version. He doesn't like how everything seems unnecessarily brighter and vibrant with the bloom filter cranked up to 11. There was also a lot of people saying that the original was better than the HD version, and one guy pointed out that most people will say that in these forums just because they personally don't like the brighter graphics of the HD version. He went on to say that the HD version is unquestionably better with all the quality of life features that it adds, and swift sail, which as far as I know just makes the sailing in the game a bit faster, which apparently it's really slow and tedious in the original. I also asked you guys, and well, the HD version cleared, even with the patches that we're going to get to in mind. I wanted to give these both a shot though, so I had a look at both of them to see what they had to offer. If we just look at things visually, the GameCube does hold up extremely well thanks to its visual art style. The Wii U, however, does look a whole lot better, especially with the new lighting system. It really is like looking at one of those RTX off or on comparisons. For me personally though, this does kind of kill the original look, especially since the lighting is just so strong on the Wii U version. If there was a way, however, to tone it down just a little, I would probably choose it over the original, because many people online have pointed out that the great quality of life that this has is well worth it. There was something interesting I found to throw into the mix though, and that's called Better Wind Waker. This can be combined with widescreen patch in order to get some of the quality of life from the HD version in the GameCube copy. Now there are limitations to what they can change, so the new UI from the HD edition is unfortunately not here, but other stuff like the instant text boxes and just in general making all of the actions in the game a lot faster. Now in terms of textures, there is quite a bit of competition here. Of course, first we have the originals.
Whoa, very nice.
That's 512 by 512, but the cartoony art style helped with getting away with the lower resolution.
It's very cool, Bateman, but that's nothing. Look at this.
That is really nice.
Nintendo's version, upscaled to fit the 1080p resolution.
Nice. But wait, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Henrico's 4K textures, upscaled and manually touched up.
Impressive. Very nice.
Let's see Hypatia's pack.
Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my god. It even has a watermark.
It was safe to say that Hypatia's textures, alongside running the game at 4K with the Better Wind Waker patch, was a really strong contender. That being said, it was really as simple as just being able to tone down that bloom on the HD version that might actually win me over. And, well, I got more than that. You see, on the CMU emulator, you have what's called community graphic packs, and there's a bunch of them that you can choose for each individual game. And for Wind Waker, there's something called Contrasty. This has many presets built in and changes the overall look of the game. For example, you can make it more colourful, you can make it super contrasty, or more importantly for what I wanted, you can tone down the bloom, or even better, make it look really close to the GameCube via a preset literally called GameCube Style. It seemed kinda odd to put that work into the Dolphin emulator just to go with the HD version because of this, but I really think this solves basically my only issue with it. That being said, I was still on the fence about this because the Dolphin has 3 things: better performance, save states, and retro achievements. For performance, at this point, Dolphin and CMU were running just as good. I was honestly surprised at how well CMU runs nowadays. But I was still unsure because I didn't know if this was going to run as good on my Steam Deck. Save states though aren't even on CMU, so that kinda sucks. For those that don't know, it basically lets you hit a button and save whenever, wherever. It's like a snapshot of your game that you can load up at any point. You can also set it so it auto-resumes these saves, so basically you can stop at any moment and pick it right up where you left off. As far as I'm aware, Wind Waker doesn't have autosaves on either of the versions, so this could be pretty handy. Lastly, retro achievements are extremely niche, but they don't exist on the CMU, so I think it's worth pointing out that the Dolphin version has that extra layer of replayability. For me personally, I'm no achievement hunter, so this wasn't a deal breaker, but it is really cool to earn achievements in older games and also have them displayed somewhere. That being said, I still think I'm willing to live without these features just for that more overall polished and modern experience, especially since this is my first time. So ultimately, HD it is. Going back to the community graphic packs, there is the ability to change the shadow resolution, but honestly, unless I'm looking at the wrong shadows here, I could not see a difference between them. I still left it on high anyway, as I didn't notice any performance hit. The only other thing to note here is that this version has motion controls. You can switch it off, but I had a DualSense, so I used that similar to what I'd done in the previous games. I kinda messed up here because whenever it asked me if I was on a Wii U gamepad or a Pro Controller, I selected Pro Controller, but that one doesn't have gyro. So what you need to do is play the game as if you're using the Wii U gamepad and select that when asked. The caveat here is that the Wii U gamepad had a screen on it, and that shows you your menus such as the inventory system in this game. The solution to this is simple within CMU though, because you just bind a key to show the gamepad screen, and then you press that whenever you want to access the menu. Now at this point the game was looking extremely clean, but why does it feel choppy? Well, it's 30 FPS. There'll be a patch online though to get it to 60 FPS like many of the other retro games out there. There is a patch to do that, right? There's no patch for 60 FPS here, is there? This is not good. The rules that I set at the start made it clear that 60 FPS was the goal, but I'm not a wizard. I can't just magic 60 FPS into the game, especially when it's hard coded into the engine like this. I started to scour the internet for just a glimmer of hope, and well, nothing here came in clutch. There is a hack for the GameCube version that states it gets it to 60, but the thing is, the issues that were stated on the page seemed way too harsh for it to be playable. The only true way that I know how to get it to run at 60, which isn't perfect, is going to be something called lossless scaling. This uses frame generation to artificially double the frame rate, getting us to 60. But the thing is, whenever you do this to 30 frames, there really just isn't enough data being fed into this program to make a compelling result. OBS also constantly refuses to record lossless scaling, but it's not really that big of a deal because I just can't play it like this anyway. Here's a video of me trying to demonstrate how much input lag it introduces. It's not crazy, but it's really not ideal. Also, the artifacting when you go from 30 to 60 is horrendous in my opinion. Everything just warps around each other and it's far too distracting. Whilst it's really frustrating, I knew that I just had to admit defeat at this point, and so I'm going to be sticking to 30 FPS. Plus, a random guy on Reddit a few years ago told me that your eyes actually can't see above 30 FPS, and we all know that random people on Reddit would never ever lie, so if that's the case, then it doesn't really matter that we're at 30 here. Moving on to running the game for 20 minutes, and well, things were perfect. No slowdowns or nothing. It's basically like I was running it natively. I talked to grandma, did some sword training, went back to talk to sister, saw some people in trouble, grabbed the sword by doing more training, saved them, and then got a shield from grandma's house to finally set sail. Now, I was dying to find out if this was going to run well on the Steam Deck. I got my answer pretty much straight away because I had already set up EmuDeck and CMU on my Steam Deck, as at this point I had had it for a couple of days. Now, do you remember Gyro DSU that I mentioned earlier? The thing that didn't work for Ship of Arcinian? Well, that actually works with this because it's built to work with CMU. It was really as easy as just downloading it from EmuDeck and then ticking motion within the controller settings. Now getting into game, to my surprise, this never dropped below 30. Even at the start, which sometimes should have some stutters due to shader compilation, there was just absolutely nothing. During my time, I low-key enjoyed this more as well on the Steam Deck as opposed to my PC. There was something about the art style combined with the great colours and contrast that the OLED screen brings of this device that just suited it so much. I basically ended up at the same point I did on PC when the 20 minutes timer was up, and with that, it's time for some Twilight Princess. So enter 2006, we were absolutely spoiled. The Xbox 360 released in 2005, and so the PlayStation 3, and of course the Wii followed in late 2006. The Wii was a magical time because, for the very first time in all of gaming history, I actually had a fair excuse to ask my parents for a console. I would show my parents the commercials and how this console wasn't like the others. It had games for the whole entire family, with controls that even grandma could use and understand. Safe to say that it actually worked, because Christmas Day came by and I got my hands on that Wii. Thing is though, I was way too busy with my bowling career in Wii Sports and trying to get that golden ball that I didn't end up playing Twilight Princess. I was clearly in the minority though, because this game sold tremendously well. It still didn't beat Ocarina of Time sales, but it well surpassed the others. But despite being a Wii launch title, it was also designed for the GameCube initially, making that version of the game the more authentic one, despite the Wii being the one that most people probably played. The most interesting difference between these though is the obvious one, motion controls. The thing is though, Link was left-handed in the GameCube version, so Nintendo knew that they couldn't launch the game because the majority of people are right-handed. They weren't going to reprogram or design everything in the game with this in mind though. They had a simpler solution: mirror the entire game. It worked, but it's clear that the GameCube version is still the way to go because of this, because you're seeing the original perspective. It was quite a relief to me that this was the case, to be honest, because I didn't want to have to set up complex motion controls to a standard controller. I still, however, did have to compare this GameCube release to the HD re-release, because it's very similar to the Wind Waker one. My initial impressions were pretty positive on this one. I think that overall Twilight Princess just looks better out of the two HD re-releases, and that's purely because the realistic art style way better suits the realistic lighting. I didn't want to get too ahead of myself though, as I still wanted to give the GameCube version a shot. Starting with absolutely nothing, this is what native looks like. Can't quite pinpoint it, but there's just something nostalgic about seeing the game like this, even for someone that has never played the game. It just looks like all the games that I used to play as a kid. I first added a 16:9 widescreen patch via what Dolphin calls a gecko code. These are essentially a bunch of numbers that perform wizardry to the game. Like, what if, hear me out, you just stop being 4x3 and now you just be 16:9. And now it looks something like this. Next, I dialed up the resolution to 4K, which gave us this, and sometimes the bloom here can get a little bit funky at this resolution, so I added another gecko code to just tone it down a little bit. Now this is where the fun begins. I found two texture packs that exist for this game. The first one is yet another Henrico pack, which looks very, very nice, then one by Victor Rosa. This time I leant more towards Henrico's just because it looked like the more complete pack here. It's worth noting as well, there is another version of Henrico's pack here, which is the post-processing edition. This is a bundled texture pack that comes with Dolphin, and in this instance it's actually a fork of Dolphin called Ishiruka, I believe it's pronounced. I believe this was initially made to retain older hardware compatibility for Dolphin versions, but it also has some extra enhancement options that we can use that are not in the other Dolphin version. From my basic understanding and from what I've seen from this fork, whatever is going on with the post-processing here is way better than any reshade, in the way that it seems to have way more data to go off than reshade, which is just layers on top of the game. This means you can add ambient occlusion, tone mapping, bloom, material maps, and much more, which this pack does. This is honestly quite a nice leap from the GameCube's default, but how close does this look to the HD re-release? Well, actually pretty damn close. I still think the HD version has a slight edge, but if we tweak the settings here, maybe we could get the two looking identical. That being said, I didn't entertain that curiosity because it's more than just a pretty face. This HD release, like the Wind Waker one, adds a bunch of quality of life changes. The UI was also noticeably nicer to navigate, and I played both for a bit and definitely preferred the HD version. So I'm just going to go with that. Oh, and also these run at 30 FPS with no patches, similar to Wind Waker. So now we have 2 out of the 4 games that I cannot get running at 60 FPS. I'd like to move on, as I would prefer not to talk about it. On the bright side though, because I chose this version, I now have both Wind Waker and Twilight Princess both on the CMU emulator, and I already had that set up, so it was super quick to get this all working. Now before we move on to the final step in this journey, of course I need to play this game for 20 minutes on both devices. So PC first. I got my horse, herded in some goats, which took way too long, these guys would just not get in. Then I spoke to a shopkeeper who was worried about her cat. I thought I had found the cat, but I never got to find out if it was the right one because both times that I tried to get it to the store, it just ended up in the water. After that, I tried catching a goat that escaped through town. This was a case where I failed loads of times and was just determined to brute force it, only to then realise if I had just read the damn text box, it literally tells you to hold down the button, not press it once like I was. So after finally catching a goat, I basically wandered around town a bit and didn't really get much done. I just kind of talked to people until the time ran out. My goal wasn't to progress the game anyway, so it was just to test it out, and it was running amazingly well. And maybe this was my coping mechanism coming into play, but 30 FPS was actually feeling quite smooth, to be honest. A bit smoother than Wind Waker. Now, because I already had set up See Me on my Steam Deck, that was going to be easy as well, and I got to playing it, and it played flawlessly. I was on a roll, 4 for 4 honestly, and I didn't really plan that, I swear. I created this 20-minute rule at the beginning of making this video, thinking that there would be issues and roadblocks in the journey, but honestly, emulation has come so far that the chances of any major issues arising seem to be pretty slim. That's not to say though there weren't issues that were outside of emulation, and don't worry, I'm not talking about anything that would cause me to have to restart the 20 minutes. I just played this game for 40 minutes, because I spent the extra 20 minutes trying to catch a damn fish in this game. I don't know what it was, but something was just not clicking for me. I could not catch this damn fish no matter what I did. I even resorted to looking on YouTube for some help and tutorials, and even that didn't help at all. I don't know if I was doing something wrong or there was something maybe bugged here, but honestly, I just gave up in the end. There was no way in hell that I was going to spend another 20 minutes of my life just trying to catch a fish. I did also search up though what the significance of catching a fish, like if you get anything for it. I found out that you actually need this fish in order to get the cat to the shopkeeper. So it would have actually been quite good if I caught that fish, wouldn't it? So I left it all behind me, and now it was time to put all the puzzle pieces together and give it that final polish that it needed. So far in my journey, I had made the games feel original with a modern twist like Rule 1. I was super happy with how it was turning out, and they were all running great at their correct resolutions on my PC and Steam Deck like Rule 2. However, I did foul at getting 2 of the 4 games running at 60 FPS. They also all passed their 20-minute tests pretty fine. Of course we had that issue in Majora's Mask, but it wasn't anything game-breaking, it was just a simple human error that I made. And like I mentioned, as I was doing this, I was also adding each game as a non-Steam game, so all of them were there and looking really seamless in my library. Also for fun, I added it all into a Steam collection within my library to make it actually feel more like a proper HD collection. There was only one thing left to do, and that was tackle Rule 5, which if you remember was to get my saves to sync from my PC to my Steam Deck. I was first going to try syncthing because, so I've heard from many other people, it's pretty good and seamless once you have it all set up, but it can be complicated. But during my time making this video, I noticed something on the Emu Deck menu. There was a button that I had yet to click on that was forever looming over me, like a chore that I kept putting off. Something that I was leaving till the last minute. It just sat there, so ominously, waiting for this very moment, when I would finally find out what it does. Would it be the seamless one-click solution that it looked to be? That sure would be helpful. Well, I clicked it and found out. And it's just for EmuDeck installations and also paywalled behind their Patreon. Now, I was fully willing to sign up to their Patreon because I want to support this project. It's absolutely saved me so many hours setting this all up. But it didn't feel like the right solution. So I wanted to give syncthing a go. And I think that was the right call, because what I found out was syncthing is like a universal syncing of any folders or files that you want it to be. That was perfect for my solution, because it meant not only could I sync my saves, but I could also sync other stuff that I wanted to, and also transfer files easily between my PC and my Steam Deck. I found this really helpful tutorial on YouTube, which I'll link below if anyone wants to try it. It essentially boiled down to me getting syncthing for both my PC and Steam Deck, adding the correct save files to them, and then syncing them both together. It might sound easy when I put it like that, but trust me, this took me about 20 to 30 minutes, and it's definitely for more advanced users. I wouldn't do this if you're a total beginner, especially when you're dealing with something like saves. You can definitely go wrong and end up losing your progress. And I myself lost my saves, but I kind of did it knowing that I could lose them because I didn't really care about these saves. They were only 20 minutes of gameplay anyway. But in hindsight, it's important to delete the folders that you're wanting to sync before syncing them. Otherwise, you confuse syncthing and can lead to conflicts, such as losing your saves. All the saves from my PC were now on my Steam Deck, so that worked. And to test things out, I got Link's outfit from Grandma on my PC, saved, and then booted the game on my Steam Deck. And at first, it didn't work. But it was because I forgot to close the game completely, so after restarting the game, it was there. This probably depends on your hardware and internet speeds, but for my use case here, basically the time that it takes to save your game, close the game, go grab your Steam Deck, open the game up on that, it will be there. It's just important that, for example, here you saw that you close the game if it's open so that it can sync the files. This was actually so game changing for me that I basically stayed up till 3 AM getting this set up on all of my devices. I still have yet to do that, as it's a tremendous undertaking to make sure that everything's syncing correctly, but my goal is to have my PC, Steam Deck, and Retroid Pocket 5 all share the same saves. For this video though, we're just focusing on the Zelda games, and we achieved that. So let's now see how all of this has come together in the end by taking a look at what these games look like on their original hardware when they're released, compared to how we have them looking now. Now I'm really sorry, but I lied about that being the last thing to do, because there is one really crucial thing, and this is the last thing I promise. And it's simple. I need to play the damn games. According to How Long to Beat, all 4 of these titles are gonna take a combined 115 hours. So I'm off to play Zelda games. I'll see you in a month or so. I want to thank the Patreon members on screen for their support. You can become a member yourself from just $1.50 a month, and it just simply supports what I do here. It's easily the best way, but also subscribing, liking, and honestly just being here is enough. So everyone on screen, I just can't thank you enough for the extra support that you're giving. Now, if you liked watching Zelda games being renewed, then how about you watch some Mario games go through the same treatment by clicking this video. See you over there.